Are we really being transferred? Or is this our last punishment?
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. Today, grim news about Syrian prisons and rallies about the rights of immigrants and in opposition to the DAPL pipeline in North Dakota. We feature the full Democracy Now! Report about the horrific mass hangings in one Syrian prison. Amy Goodman interviews Nicolette Waldman, who co-authored Amnesty International's shocking report.
Amnesty International has released a shocking report claiming as many as 13,000 people, mostly civilians, have been hanged in a Syrian government military prison in recent years. Amnesty accuses the Assad government of running a human slaughterhouse and engaging in a deliberate policy of extermination by hanging thousands of civilians at a prison near Damascus. Amnesty says the killings amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity. Earlier this week, Amnesty released a video describing how they uncovered the mass killings.
Since 2011, tens of thousands of people have disappeared into a vast network of prisons and detention centres run by the Syrian government. Many have been taken to Saydnaya, a notorious and terrifying prison where detainees are incarcerated in horrific conditions, systematically and brutally tortured. Thousands have died in confinement. Inaccessible to journalists and independent monitoring groups, the prison is a black hole of which no recent images exist. The memories of those who survive it are the only available resource with which to understand what happens within Syednaya. In April 2016, Amnesty International and Forensic Architecture travelled to Turkey to meet a group of Syednaya survivors. We used architectural and acoustic modelling to reconstruct the prison and their experiences of detention. Because the prisoners were held in darkness and under a brutally enforced silence, their memories depend on an acute experience of sound. Footsteps, doors opening and locking, water dripping in the pipes. All of these sounds structure detainees' experiences of space and time and forebode what was to come. Based on these testimonies, we have constructed a model of the entire prison and located the witness testimonies and the sounds they recall within it. These testimonies are traumatic recollections and are rarely straightforward descriptions of events. In Syednaya, the architecture of the prison emerges not only as a location of torture, but itself as an instrument in its perpetration.
The Syrian Justice Ministry has rejected Amnesty International's finding, issuing a statement saying, quote, "The Justice Ministry denies and condemns in the strongest terms what was reported because it is not based on correct evidence but on personal emotions that aim to achieve well-known political goals." Amnesty's report, titled Human Slaughterhouse, was published on Tuesday, less than 2 weeks after President Trump signed an executive order banning refugees indefinitely and temporarily barring entry to all citizens from Syria and 6 other Muslim-majority nations. It also comes as Fox News is reporting Russia has just sent Syria the largest shipment of missiles between the two countries to date.
We go now to London, where we're joined by Nicolette Waldman, an Amnesty International researcher specializing in detention issues. She's the co-author of Amnesty's new report. The title is chilling, the information inside even more so. Human Slaughterhouse. Nicolette, tell us what you found.
Over the course of a year of research, we found that the Syrian authorities are carrying out a calculated campaign of mass hangings and extermination at Saydnaya prison. Every week, and often twice a week, prisoners are taken out of their cells and brought to another prison, another building on the grounds of the prison, where they're hanged to death. And since 2011, as many as 13,000 people have been hanged. As the backdrop to this, detainees are held in horrific conditions, and the Syrian authorities have been deliberately inflicting repeated torture, as well as the systematic deprivation of food, water, medicine, and medical care, which has caused a massive number of deaths.
And Nicolette, can you give us a sense of how many people are detained in Saydnaya and how many similar prisons there are across Syria?
What we've been told is that between 10,000 and 20,000 detainees are held in Syria at any given time. But I want to point out that it's very difficult to know exactly how many, because the government releases no evidence, no information on the whereabouts of the people that they arrest. And in fact, almost every detainee arrested by the Syrian authorities is disappeared, meaning that they're cut off from their friends, their families, and the outside world. In terms of the other detention facilities in Syria, there's a vast network of centers that we know about and centers that we do not know about. So this is a very large system that has processed tens of thousands of people since 2011 in particular. And since that time, as many as 17,700 people have died as a result of these extermination policies, which is the result of repeated torture and terrible conditions. So the 17,700 deaths is even in addition to these as many as 13,000 people who have been hanged at Saydnaya prison.
I want to turn to a short animated video produced by Amnesty International. The script is extrapolated from the experiences of prisoners interviewed by Amnesty.
Why aren't we leaving? Why are we being taken to solitary cells? It's so cramped. It's okay. Soon we will be in a better place. I can't take these new beatings. It has never been so bad. Are we really being transferred? Or is this our last punishment? We are on the move. We stopped. Why? We're in another building. They grabbed my finger. They're taking my fingerprints. What? I can't believe it. They tell me I've been condemned to death and ask if I have any last wish. I've done nothing wrong. They said I was being transferred. I'm supposed to be transferred. Dear God, protect my family.
The animation ends with the hanging of the man. That video ends with the words, as many as 13,000 people have been executed in Saydnaya since 2011. Our guest, Nicolette Waldman, co-author of the Amnesty report. Can you tell us, Nicolette, how you got this information, how you collected this information from prisoners and also from guards?
What we did for this report is that we carried out the research over the course of 12 months, so from December 2015 to December 2016. And in that time, we interviewed 84 witnesses. These witnesses included former detainees who had witnessed different steps of the execution process. And we also identified former guards and officials at the prison. As well, we interviewed former judges and Syrian lawyers. And with all of the information we received, which was oftentimes collected after 2 or 3 or more interviews with each witness to evaluate the veracity and the consistency of what they were saying, we were able to corroborate, cross-check, and finally build up a step-by-step picture of what is happening at Saydnaya. Now, most of these interviews were carried out in southern Turkey, and and in other areas in Turkey, as well as remotely with witnesses in Lebanon, Jordan, the US, and Europe. And we were forced to actually conduct this research outside of Syria because we have been barred from entering government-controlled areas since 2011. We've also been barred, along with almost every international monitoring group, from entering the prisons in Syria. So what's important to remember is that these are really black holes of war crimes and crimes against humanity, where crimes have been taking place on a widespread, systematic, and continual basis since 2011. And the main crimes against humanity that are being committed, again, these are crimes against humanity, some of the most serious international crimes that you could ever imagine. But just at Saydnaya, the crimes against humanity that are being carried out since 2011 are murder, disappearance, torture, and extermination. So these are massive violations that we're really pushing the world to take notice of and to take action.
And Nicolette, as you mentioned, you also spoke to prison guards, former prison guards. Now, that prison was run by Syrian military personnel. How did you get them to speak to you, and what did they say about why they were working at this prison?
So to identify the guards, we ended up taking, again, a very long and arduous process of using local contacts, civil society organizations, our own contacts, basically a network of people to help us identify these people, because we felt that these findings were so significant and so weighty that we needed to have not only the witness testimony, but also people from the inside. And what they told us about why they conducted these crimes is really is not something that we talked about. Instead, we were trying to get the information. However, what is clear to me is that this is not a system that is carried out by one person or another. This is a top-down system where it's very much controlled through the highest levels of the Syrian government and the Syrian political establishment. And what we found about these policies of mass hangings and extermination is that they come from the very top, and that actually the very farcical death sentences that are issued to the prisoners are signed by the Minister of Defense, who is deputized to act for President Assad, and that the hangings themselves, which take place in the middle of the night and in total secrecy, are overseen by a panel of men, which include top-level security force officers, as well as top officials from the prison, and as well from Tishreen Military Hospital, where the prisoners are taken by the truckload after they are hanged to be registered before they are taken on to mass graves.
Now, the Assad regime, as you've pointed out, does not talk about this prison. It's more or less concealed from view. But the Assad regime has, of course, been accused of some of the worst atrocities against its civilian population, and that occurs mostly in broad daylight. Now, you say what's going on in this prison is more sinister. And why is that?
It's absolutely sinister, and I think that's the exact right word to use, because not only are these hangings taking place, again, on a routine basis, weekly or twice a week, but the conditions in which these prisoners are held are just very difficult to comprehend, but we have to try. And basically what we've been told through very consistent testimony, I heard the same things again and again, is that prisoners are actually routinely beaten. They are also not allowed to make any sound. So even when they are tortured, they cannot make a sound, and they are punished if they do with further beatings. They are also forced to pick somebody in the cell who then must dole out the punishment or the torture each day. And they're also, what we've been told, forced to rape each other. The prisoners, especially the older prisoners, will be forced to rape sometimes the younger prisoners. And what we were told by one witness is that after these rapes, the men are so traumatized that they even stop eating, and they just can't carry on. But in these very sadistic and just horrible rules, the prisoners are also being subjected to the systematic deprivation of food, water, medicine, and medical care. So they're dying horrific deaths of thirst, of hunger, of diseases, and then treatable infections. All of what they're going through is treatable. And this is why we're calling this the crime against humanity of extermination, which is a particular crime in the Rome Statute, which refers to when a state actually inflicts conditions on a certain sector of a population, and with the intent of destroying that population. And what we found is that the Syrian authorities aim to destroy the people that they have in their custody. And finally, I want to point out that these people, the vast majority of them are civilians. Some of their most common profiles are long-term political dissidents, they're human rights defenders, they're journalists, they're humanitarian aid activists, and sometimes they have just people who went to one or two protests. So these are people who went out and basically spoke and demanded a freer and fairer society in Syria. And for that, they're paying the ultimate price.
A stunning report. Much less pleasing, though, on Democracy Now! Was part of an interview with Glenn Greenwald, where he was complaining about what he said the CIA was doing in making leaks that eventually led to the ouster of Flynn. He said that one of the, quote, main priorities of the CIA for the last 5 years has been the proxy war in Syria, designed to achieve regime change with the Assad regime. So the whole uprising of hundreds of thousands against the dictator, torturer, and mass hangman is reduced to a CIA plot. Greenwald doesn't offer a shred of evidence of this CIA conspiracy against Assad. The U.S. under Obama gave lip service to the cause of Syrian freedom, but its main interests in Syria were keeping Israel happy and later the threat of ISIS. I regret Democracy Now! Didn't really have an expert who could really talk about Syria, like Dr. Joseph Daher, who just finished a tour of some Canadian and U.S. cities talking in support of the Syrian people. Speaking of foolish ideas, a number of people who should know better are supporting the Tulsi Gabbard bill that supposedly fights against terrorism. I call it the Crush the White Helmets Act. It pretty much bans the U.S. from helping any of the groups trying to assist victims of Assad tyranny. See our website, thestruggle.org, for details. Now to a demonstration in New Haven against Trump's Muslim travel order. We withheld it until now for reasons I'll explain later.
No ban, no wall, sanctuary for all. 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 Yeah! Trump says get back. We say fight back. 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 Trump says get back.
She has a family who came over and
I'm a Muslim, and this is my prayer rug, and it's pretty clear that one of the key points of Trump's presidency is to demonize Islam as a religion and to demonize Muslims, particularly Arab Muslims, but Muslims no matter their race, as fifth columns and terrorists and un-Americans. And I want to show that Islam is a religion for all people, and Islam is a religion of peace, and it's an accepting religion, and that the Muslim community on campus and in New Haven is reaching out in solidarity with everyone that's affected by the presidency.
So you mentioned on campus, do you go to school?
Yes, sir. At Yale University.
And could you describe the rug itself and what it depicts?
Yeah. This prayer rug depicts a mosque in the lower left-hand corner, and on the right side is a bridge, and it connects the mosque, which has a beautiful verdant garden, to a land across the bay. And the way I see it, it connects Islam as a religion, as a way of life with the world around it, and it shows that it's more than just abstract theology. It's a way of life, and it's a way for people to live their lives in terms of agriculture and industry and everything.
People ask me, well, you know, you're Native American, why would you want refugees here? Look what they've done to your country, you know? And I spoke about that. It's not our culture, and it never would be our culture to turn anybody in need away. We can't do that. As a Native American man, I know we can never, ever do that. We'd like to send some of yous back, like maybe the whole city of Washington.
The people united
will never be defeated.
The people united
will never be defeated.
The people united
will never be defeated.
El pueblo unido. Ah, se la saben. You know, this is my favorite chant because I grew up in my country in Colombia, and I remember that chant. You know, we use it all the time when we march against the government, and we use it in different countries in Latin America. So when I say the people united will never be defeated, because finally we're getting together thanks to this guy.
Sanctuary for all, no man, no wall. 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 Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go.
There were arrests at the end of the rally, so we held back our video for legal reasons. But after it was determined we didn't have any relevant video for the incident and the arrests, we now showed it to you. What happened was this. Protesters had blocked a highway for about half an hour, and then when they were walking back to the city center, state and city police aggressively pushed them back onto the sidewalk and then injured and arrested one of the protest leaders. At least two things about that incident should bother you. First, state police claimed that the protesters had blocked an ambulance, and because of that, medical personnel on that ambulance had to perform a special procedure. Yet when a reporter for the New Haven Independent questioned that ambulance company, they denied that any of their ambulances had been blocked. In addition, the police brought dogs with them to police this rally. For what reason? They weren't contending with Nazi gangs. It was peaceful protesters they were dealing with. Reportedly, one out-of-control dog bit 3 policemen. Shades of Birmingham, Alabama, and Standing Rock. Dogs should not be a routine part of police crowd control. There ought to be a city investigation on the apparent lie by state police and the use of dogs to control peaceful and righteous protest. Now to a protest that was handled much more properly. The Valentine 4, who blocked a downtown entrance to TD Bank on Valentine's Day to protest TD's investment in a North Dakota fossil fuel DAPL pipeline.
Ho ho! Dakota access got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! Dakota access got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! Dakota access got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! Dakota access got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! Dakota access got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! Dakota access got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! Dakota access got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! Dakota access got to go! Genocide! TD Bank, you get high! You're committing genocide! TD Bank, divest now! Can't drink oil!
Keep it in the soil! You can't drink oil! Keep it in the soil!
Not another nickel! Not another dime! No more money for DAPL's crime! Not another nickel! No more dimes! Divest now! We don't get it!
Get down!
Divest right now! We don't get it! We don't get it! TD Bank! Divest now! We don't get it! Shut it down! TD Bank! Divest now! If we don't get it, shut it down!
TD Bank! Divest now! Shut it down!
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller, and this has been The Struggle.